Hello, beautiful people. Thank you again for joining me for another week of this podcast. I don't really have much I want to give in the intro, so I think I will just get straight into the experience. This one is from a lady called Stefania. Surname initial starts with S. And this is Stefania's experience. I was born with a congenital heart defect, which means there was a hole between the arteria of the heart. This condition mixes venal and arterial blood. I never experienced any symptoms from the condition, and it never put my life in danger. The unusual thing is that in my case, the exact diagnosis was made 1 month before my 16th birthday. Up until that time, all the cardiologists had been mistaken and had tried other cures. My cardiopathy had been diagnosed during the first years of my life. The cardiologist, the only and first one who diagnosed me correctly, was surprised at how I'd lived to almost 16 years of age in perfect health. I had total vitality, with my body full of life, and without ever having any idea that I was ill. My heart had never shown any signs that it was working overtime or was even out of balance. The doctor immediately was very firm and determined to talk to my parents about operating on me straight away. He said that if I didn't get the operation, I would encounter irreversible heart problems. I was going to be operated on without having any symptoms and purely for preventative reasons. This would guarantee me a healthy life without the need for therapies and medications. In fact, my clinical file reads, surgically cured. In that doctor's office, face to face with the cardiologist who was deciding where and when I should be operated on, my mind refused the idea of having a heart operation. In the 2 months leading up to the surgical intervention, I had felt a great anguish and was convinced that I would die. I was a 16-year-old girl, and for me, the heart was linked with my romantic ideas of love. I was convinced that one couldn't keep on living as though nothing had happened to open the heart and make it work. Among other things, I didn't accept the idea that I needed this operation, since I was fine and had no health problems, despite the cardiologist's urgings. The concept of being operated on in order to prevent problems and any future heart damage did not fit into my way of thinking and reasoning or seeing life at 16 years of age. I had researched the current surgical techniques that they would be using, and the fact that the surgeon was going to take all this time operating on me, taking all the time that he needed, frightened me even more. The picture of me lying on an operating table with my heart temporarily stopped and my thoracic cavity void of blood confirmed my conviction that I would certainly die there. Now, I will describe the circumstances of the experience I went through. The heart surgery had been finished for some hours. It was a normal procedure, after which I was taken into intensive care. In a different type of hospital bed, I was hooked up to all kinds of monitors that were continuously registering all the physiological activities of each organ. But I was no longer in my body. I floated without weight or physicality. I was above my body and directly below the ceiling of the intensive therapy room. I observed the scene that was taking place below me. I say below me and want to specify that I'm not referring to a physical or logistical position. I, who no longer was the body that had belonged to me just a moment prior, found myself in a position which was energetically more elevated. I was at a place that had nothing to do with any kind of earthly or material experience. I was a pure expression of existence and existed on a different level and in a different dimension. From this dimension, I observed everything that was happening and all the succeeding events without being involved. As I was floating free like this, without thought or physical limitations, I experienced a feeling of infinite, supreme blessedness or happiness that was independent of any external factors. I felt myself float in this blessed place, and I was in the blessed space. I floated freely without purpose and direction. I existed, and that was it. At the same time, I experienced an extremely alive and vigilant state of mind. I understood at a very deep level what was happening on that other plane of existence. The plane where the body that had belonged to me and that was now intubated on the hospital bed in intensive care. The thought was very lucid and came through immediate knowing. It was a different way of thinking from which I had experienced while on earth. I recognized the body as mine, but was no longer interested. I was not that body. I felt very good where I was now, and very surprised at the spectacle that was happening around the body which had belonged to me. I watched the spectacle, but it wasn't my physical eyes that saw everything the doctors were doing. I looked on with my whole being. I was having the experience from a state of consciousness which completely pervaded my being, and I perceived everything from that vantage point. I knew that the doctors were making a big deal to get me back from where I was. I knew that other surgeons had arrived from other wards to help out, but I did not want to return from where I was. I was floating in a dimension that was enveloped in soft celestial light, very rarefied. It was a light full of quiet and peace. It expressed unconditional bliss without end. I was free from being. Here everything was heavenly. I was enveloped in heaven. In this dimension, I simply was. I was experiencing the fact of existing, and this experience was happening on another level of existence. I knew with all my being that I was in a dimension outside of time and space, and I did not want to return to my body. I didn't understand the agitation coming from all the doctors who were surrounding the body which had belonged to me and with which now I wanted nothing to do. I remember thinking, why are they persisting so much? What is their problem? I am fine where I am. I knew I didn't want to go back into the body because I didn't want to face up to everything that was waiting for me on earth. Even if I didn't know what was waiting for me, I knew with absolute certainty that it wouldn't be anything like the peace I was experiencing where I was. Nothing could be as perfect and soft like this heavenly condition of absolute far-away bliss in which I was floating. They brought me back into the body and back to earth. When I opened my eyes back in the body on earth, I was in intensive therapy, and I didn't remember my experience. I didn't remember anything. I did, however, know for sure that I'd returned from a journey, and I knew this journey had lasted a long time, and yet it was only for an instant. All the commotion by the outside doctors was verified. Normally when one wakes up after a surgery like mine, no one can speak. In general, one retains this faculty after about 24 hours. But I was talking right away. While I was talking and laughing with the doctors who were all around me, I suddenly sensed an uncontrollable urge to help the woman who was in the bed next to mine. She had been operated on after me. I always remembered the communication she and I had. It was a communication that came without speaking or words, through our eyes and thoughts. She had begged me to help her. She was very cold and couldn't speak because, as I have explained, she couldn't ask the doctors for a blanket. That's why she asked me, as I had been euphorically speaking with the doctors to get it for her. I was euphorically speaking, even though I wasn't remembering my near-death experience. Evidently, this blissful energy still vibrated within me. I was very happy to have been able to help another living being. I remember feeling very strongly that I had this desire to be of service to others, and this lady was giving me the opportunity. Still today, I remember the vivid look of gratitude she gave me when they covered her up. I felt a momentum of love and a very strong compassion. At the same time, I felt so much older than my barely 16 years of age. I had always been timid and insecure. A year before, I had begun my first romance. At least that's what I was thinking up until that moment. But in that instant, when they revived me after the operation, in the same instant that I was having that experience with the woman next to me, that's when I perceived that I had returned from a long trip in which I had journeyed very far and yet so close. I also knew that I had grown up in that one instant, and the girl that I had been fine with was no longer the one I wanted. I wanted something else, but I didn't know what. During this time, the doctors were telling my parents that they had been 10 minutes, during which they were absolutely preoccupied with me, since my heart hadn't been responding to their stimuli. From that moment on, and for the next 11 years, I did not remember the experience. But every time I talked about the heart operation, I knew somehow that it had been the most important experience of my life, but I couldn't remember why I felt that way. Every time I talked about it, I was filled with such emotion which made me cry. From that moment on, I was no longer afraid of death, although I didn't understand why. On the contrary, I explained it to myself rationally. I endured and survived that type of operation. The doctors had initiated a type of clinical death, so why should I fear death? After the hospital, I started up my life, but I was no longer the same person. Things, friends, and my pastimes of before no longer satisfied me. I was restless, unsatisfied, and I began searching for something. Only one thing was clear. I wanted to be of service to others. I wanted to be like that time with the woman in intensive care, and more than that. I thought I was fulfilling that yearning by enrolling in the Department of Medicine so as to become a heart surgeon. But my path would not turn out to be that one. The memory of that state of awareness during the heart operation really was a revival of my being to our very nature. And from there, the guiding thread of the events of my life began, and I became my guide. I was trying to make sense of everything so that I could frame the events of that fascinating adventure in the proper context. the mysterious and surprising thing that is the life that I decided to live on this earth, in this body. Then, 11 years after the heart operation, and after having gone through a lightning bolt marriage with an immediate separation, I began a courageous journey of self-discovery. This search would yield all the answers, the reasons and truth as to why and how I ended up at the altar with someone who was the opposite person to me that I could ever have met. I started psychotherapy to manage the stress, frustration, anxiety, dismay, and loss of a marriage. I had barely begun and immediately ended with a divorce looming ahead. After just a few therapy sessions, I experienced the first in what of thought I would define with this unique term, awakening of consciousness. I re-experienced what happened in the operating room 11 years ago. It was the same experience. Suddenly I heard a muffled sound in my left ear. I was delicately thrown out of my body. Afterwards, every time that it happened again, I recognized the small deafness, the vibration of creation, the Om. From this new perspective, being outside my body, I landed at the edge of another dimension of existence. It was a dimension above time and space where everything that exists is bliss, harmony, freedom, and perfection. Everything that happens is perfect just because it accords perfectly with a cosmic order in which we all take part. In an instant, I knew that life we live is an illusion. It's not real because it's a creation of our minds. We continuously create thoughts and then project these thoughts outside of the mind, just as cinema frames are projected onto a screen. In that moment, I knew that real life is something other than what we think it is. We are all expressions of a love energy. It is from which we come and where we are destined to return, so as to merge once again in this original oneness, which our minds make us believe we have lost. This place is paradise and our union with all. My first experience, and also in all the succeeding ones, I experienced a state of merging with the all, the one which the Oriental traditions define as samadhi, or cosmic, or state of cosmic merging. So I lived the experience of fusion with creation many more times. The first experience was at 16 years of age, even if the veil of forgetfulness swallows it up for a while. The trace of it was also always alive inside me and drove me again to the revelations of the truth of existence. I had the experience of merging with everything that lives and vibrates in the universe. I felt myself one with the mountains which are in front of me, with the lakes. I felt one with the sea and the tides. I felt there was no separation between me and the clouds. While I was in this experience, I communicated with humans and animals. I knew what other people were thinking and what they were feeling. I knew who was behind closed doors, and I remained in that state of merging for days and days. To sum it up, I can say that I received the gift of experience of being back and joined with the all. I carried the awareness that this all is one unique energy, which goes from a refined level and down through increasingly denser levels according to the mental state which is having the experience. Thanks to the gifts of reliving the experience, I know that life is eternal and unbroken, and that death, the way we see it on earth, doesn't exist. It's only a trip to another plane of existence. From my first experience up until now, I'm understanding that every day that I live on earth in this body, I am to experience joy and bliss here. The lives we live here on earth don't happen by chance. Our lives are a direct consequence of what the mind creates. I am here on earth to open my heart every day to unconditional love. I am here in this body to leave behind my every remaining fear and attachment. I am here on earth to express every day the joy that I am. I am here to discover here and now. Much more space for freedom lies deep within me. I am here to learn freedom and expand it throughout the world around me. I am here on earth to live happiness and lightness of being. I am here in this body and in this dimension of space and time to learn that each and every moment is the only reality which exists. Everything else is an illusion created by thoughts, created by the mind. I am here to remember that in every moment I can rediscover who I really am, and that I am here to have fun and to play because this world is the joyful creation of the divine. I am here on this earth because I have the full and holy right to do everything that makes me happy, and it is my duty to create even more joy in order to contribute to the expansion and happiness of all and everything in creation. I came into this body on this earth to be light-hearted and carefree, here and now. And that's the end of Stefania's experience. So she finished off there with some pretty inspirational messages and reasons and purpose for her being here, which I was getting a little bit tired towards the end, so I didn't quite give it the energy and justice I think it desired. It was quite powerful stuff. So yeah, when I go through it again, I will definitely go through that last paragraph a little bit more thoroughly. But to be honest, I got a little bit confused. There was parts of that experience I really liked. It started off well, and then she had her experience, and then it got a little bit confusing in terms of her remembering parts of it. Not remembering, and then she kind of had experiences later on which helped trigger a memory. It was a little bit unclear for me, but anyway, let's go through it again. So Stefania had congenital heart defect, which is a condition which mixes the venal and arterial blood, which sounds pretty serious to me. And in fact, the doctors are actually very surprised that she hasn't had any health issues at all from this. So the blood leaving her heart that is full of oxygen is getting mixed with the blood coming back to the heart, which has little oxygen. So you'd think because of that, the blood leaving the heart would have less oxygen than it would in a healthy person, which should create quite a few health issues. So for whatever reason, maybe it's because this lady is so young and still pretty healthy. She's only 16 years of age, that somehow the body's been able to adjust to this condition and function pretty well without having its full capabilities. But that being said, it sounds like it's pretty serious, and the doctors decide that they need to operate to fix this problem because it's, even though it's not causing her any problems now, down the track as she starts to age and isn't so young and healthy and resistant to disease and other forms of problems that can evolve as you get older, they decide to do an operation while she's 16 years of age. I used to, when I was reading these experiences, when I started doing it, which is, about 18 months or so ago, I would read these first paragraph or so on how these people ended up having the experiences they do, and often it involves having some kind of surgery, or they have some kind of health conditions, um, and this is what is precedes their actual near-death experience. And I used to find this quite boring, but now that I am studying nursing and getting right into all these different health issues, I actually quite enjoy the ones that go into a bit of detail as to what the actual health issues were, and what causes um, the life within them to stop rolling on, and what this actual factors that lead up to the near-death experience. So in this case, it's surgery, because she needs to fix, basically, I guess in layman's terms, a leaky heart. And she's reluctant to do this because she's 16 years old, and she thinks that, okay, like I really can't see, as you do as a kid, you're number one, you're scared of surgery, and then you get these other things that with youth, such as, I'm bulletproof. I don't, if I'm fine up until now, why do I need surgery to prevent potential future problems? Because when you're that age, I guess you think you're pretty bulletproof, and you think you're always going to be that way, and you can't really understand the need for such a big operation. And open heart surgery, that's pretty huge, and I can see where this girl's coming from. She also ties in the notion of, she's just had got her first boyfriend, and she's scared that she links her heart to the romantic ideas of love. And I guess she thinks that once her heart's been played around with, this might have some kind of bearing on her notion of love, and it might somehow jeopardize her capability to love someone. And I guess when you're that age, you just, you're not as knowledgeable as you are as you get older. So she's got a few concerns leading into this surgery. So she gets hooked up to all these machines, and it's like one sentence she's talking about um, going into this surgery, and the next it's like bam, I'm in this next dimension. It's not like a wow thing. It's just, or this incredible thing just happened. Like it's not like I was met by guides. I went through this amazing tunnel. She just calmly says I was getting hooked up to these machines, and then the next thing I know, I'm floating above my body, and as though it's the most normal thing in the world. And she says that she can see her body below her, but below her isn't really an apt description of what's actually going on here, because her presence, her spirit, her consciousness is not really in a dimension that is like we experience here on Earth. It seems she's in multiple places at once. So to describe her body as being below her isn't quite accurate. She says this new dimension just gives her the feel that isn't on Earth anymore. She has no real attachment to the material experience that we do. It's she does a good job here, I think, of actually putting into words what this is like. It's not a bad effort. I've seen a few people try to describe what exactly this other dimension is like, and I like the way she has kept it pretty real here. Nothing over the top, just pretty accurate description of what this new place feels like to her. she doesn't go into whether she's scared or excited to be there. She just seems fairly calm and content in a new situation. And as time in this, and I guess that's probably the wrong word to use here because we know time doesn't exist in this other dimension, but as we continue to go through this experience, she starts to notice other things like she has no physical limitations. She feels infinite. She has supreme bliss that is independent of any external factors. So that's to stop there and go through those three things she's just described there, and I'll throw in she doesn't have thought either. So she's in this dimension. There's no body, there's no thoughts, there's a knowing that you can go and do anything you want, I guess, is what she means by a feeling of infinite. So with that must come extreme feelings of being powerful, being in control, and just a knowing that you can be anything you want. And as well as all these limitless feelings in this other dimension, she's also getting waves of extreme love or happiness. And these are coming regardless of what she is doing. So she doesn't need to go out and buy some clothes to make her feel happy, or to have a drink of alcohol, or to go for that run around the block to get that feeling of bliss. It is just a natural part of her being to experience this way. And she can feel herself floating in this place, and it's a divine dimension is the way I'm rereading this. So she says she has no purpose or direction, which is an interesting choice of words, because for me personally, in this realm, as Nick Dove in this human form, these are two things that I definitely need to keep me grounded and sane in this reality without a purpose in life or some sort of goal that I'm aiming for. I start to lose direction and can tend to gravitate towards feelings of darkness because I get bored, I lose the desire to want to be here because I've got nothing to achieve. So it's interesting in this other dimension, this lady Stefania doesn't even need a reason to be there. She's just there and she's existing, and that's enough. It's something we as humans can probably, I often read experiences where this is the case. They just don't need anything to obtain happiness. And you hear the odd quote here and there, and you read the odd experience here and there that says, have little, need less, and that is a path to inner peace. And it sounds true on some levels. You'd think if you can get this kind of bliss from without needing anything or having to do anything, then that should be something we can aim for. But like I just said, for me personally, although that sounds great, is that really a realistic option in this reality? Like I just said, I need to have some sort of goal to aim for. But I guess what this experience is saying is that once we leave this human form, we start to realize that just being is enough. You are content in the, whatever you want to call it, soul, spirit, essence, consciousness is just happy to just be. You don't need this external distraction to give you pleasure anymore. Then she goes on to describe what she feels about her body. She says she just doesn't feel any connection to it at all anymore. It's like she's very, very content to be where she is. It's like the body, it has no interest whatsoever. It's like she's just shed a shell, and that shell is just like an old piece of clothing that she doesn't really have a connection to whatsoever. She kind of starts to understand that big group of cells, blood, tissue, hair, that she was so absorbed in when she was in that actual body no longer controls her, and she sees the truth of what she truly is when she is in this other dimension. And later on in this experience, she actually talks about how death is not what we as humans think it is. It's just a way that we shapeshift, I guess, or it opens the door to the next dimension. So she's watching this scene, she's watching these doctors work, and she's very surprised at the amount of effort these doctors are putting in to help her. She's like you hear every now and then on these experiences, she's in a better place. She doesn't understand the panic that they're going through to keep her around, and because she's actually watching all this and seeing that it's all a little bit crazy I think is a good way to describe it. She says she watched the spectacle, but it wasn't my physical eyes that saw what the doctors were doing. She said, so this is interesting. I kind of wonder sometimes when I read these experiences what that actually means when you are able to leave your body and still see things that are going on around you. And sometimes the spirit will be seeing spiritual things in another dimension, and sometimes they will be watching uh, what's happening in the physical world where we are today. And in this case, this is what she's seeing. She's left her body in the hospital. She's seeing the doctors working on her body. And she says, obviously she's not using her physical eyes, but isn't it incredible that the spirit or soul is still able to see, and see is probably not quite the appropriate description of what Stefania is trying to describe here. She's saying she's looking on this scene with her whole being. So it's interesting because obviously when we see, we use eyes to pick up different vibrations of light, which travels through nerve endings and tells the brain what is going on in this physical realm. But when you are in spirit form, what does seeing actually mean? Because you don't have the senses like we do as a human. So the best way Stefania is able to describe this is she says she looks on this scene with her whole being. And she's having this experience from a state of consciousness which pervaded her being. And she's able to perceive everything in much more detail than she could as when she is in human form and using the eyes you and I have. So she's floating in this dimension and she feels enveloped by a celestial light and just feels so full of peace and quiet, and it just feeling of being free, and everything is heavenly and light, and she's just happy being her. She doesn't need anything outside of her to bring her joy. Doesn't that sound absolutely awesome? Just happy sitting there in your own, not skin, because she's no longer in her skin, in her own consciousness, and not needing anything or feeling horrible about what happened or will happen. Just being very content with the place she's in at the moment. And I think most of us can relate to what she's saying here, not on the level she's talking about, but every now and then, I think most people, some more than others, will have moments in time where they are happy to just be. I mean, it might not last for a very long time. It might only be 20, 30 seconds when you first sit down on the couch after a hard day's work, or you just lie down in bed and about to go to sleep. You're just happy for that brief moment in time. And I guess that's why some people meditate, so they can sit down, try to remove all thoughts and distractions from their life, close their eyes, and just be comfortable being. And that, I think I've talked about this before. I've tried meditation. I continue to attempt it. I'm not very good at it. I used to go to a Buddhist, I don't know, monastery, is that the word? Once a week when I was back in my other city. And I quite enjoyed it, but I was never able to sit there for the full hour and just not not get distracted. I would be opening my eyes and looking at what everyone else was doing, but everyone else seemed to be closing their eyes and right into it. So I don't know. I guess it's like everything. If you keep practicing meditation, you will get better at it, and it is meant to bring you enormous benefits. So it is meant to be good for your health and well-being. So it is probably something I should try to put a little bit more effort into. But anything that can lead you to being more comfortable in your own skin and to give you that mental space away from the negativity that is the mind and the ego is obviously a very good thing, and will bring you all kinds of health benefits on a mental and a physical level. So she notices the doctors are getting closer to bringing her back into her body, and this is not giving her much joy at all. She's very happy where she is and doesn't want to come back, but they do. They manage to get her back in there, and one of the first things she does is notice that she can communicate, and the doctors are very surprised because most people who have been resuscitated from the situation she is in take about 24 hours, she says, to regain the ability to talk via the mouth. And she is just in a state of euphoria, and she thinks that she's carried a little bit of this blissful energy that she had in the other realm back with her. And this is giving her the ability to overcome any side effects from the drugs or the physical conditions which put her there in the first place, and have allowed her to resume talking immediately. She feels like she's changed. She's only 16 years of age, and this is where I get a little bit confused because she kind of jumps around in terms of, is this straight after the operation or is this a few months later? But anyway, the next paragraph says she is feeling much older than at 16 years of age. She was timid and insecure, but now she just feels this intense urge to go out and try to be more brave, to try to be a different person, to give everything in life a go, and just don't hold back. And I guess this is because in this dimension, although she doesn't actually say this, I think she's beginning to realize that this world we live in is an incredible opportunity, and although the other dimension sounds amazing, there's certain things you can't do there, and that is live in a world where you live and die by the decisions you make, and everything you do here is going to have consequences. And I'm sure in the other dimension you can relive an Earth-like experience, but I guess on some level, you're recreating a physical world, and it's not the same thing as actually living in one and having to really live and die by the decisions you make, and it's a different thing to recreating it in another dimension when you're actually here in the flesh, in person. It's all very real, but an illusion nonetheless at the same time, if that makes sense. She finds that she's no longer the same person. As time goes by, the things that used to bring her joy are no longer satisfying her. She finds her hobbies are changing, the people she hung out with, and she's just feeling, incredibly restless and unsatisfied. So she has one yearning, one major burning, which I love this. She wants to be of service of others. And when she first came out of this experience, she says that she woke up and she was able to telepathically communicate with this girl who is in the hospital bed next to her, which is pretty amazing as well. And I guess this is a little bit of the afterglow of her near-death experience. She still has this ability to read other people, hear their thoughts, and communicate with them. At least she can with this girl. And this girl next to her is freezing. She's in bed. She hasn't got any blankets on, and she's unable to communicate. But she is able to tell Stefania that she's cold and she needs a blanket, and she goes and Stefania then passes this message on to the nurses, who then give her some warmer things on her bed. So this gives Stefania incredible joy, and that feeling of helping someone else is something that stays with her, and she kind of is thankful for the ability to be able to be put in a world like this and be of service to others. And I kind of do a little bit of this myself every now and then. When I am able to help someone, I kind of quietly say to myself, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be able to serve you. Because that, rather than thinking, oh my God, I've got to go and help this person now, it's probably a better mindset to be thankful to be in a world where you can have the opportunity to give and to help others, and just receive that joy that comes with that. It's a good little experience to have, that the blessing of being able to assist others in need. So yeah, she then goes on to say she has this marriage which starts and ends pretty abruptly, and this leads her into some intense psychotherapy to manage the stress and anxiety that has come with this breakup. And she continues on her spiritual journey. And later, the next paragraph goes on to say, I re-experienced what happened in the operating room 11 years ago. It was the same experience. So she doesn't say how this happens, like if she was meditating or if she just was, in a normal day-to-day routine, but she just says suddenly she is thrown out of her body. She hears the deafness of creation and goes back into that dimension where there is no such thing as time and space, and all that exists is perfection, freedom, and bliss. And then she kind of explains how our reality works. So she says that the life we live here is an illusion, and everything is not real because it's just a creation of our minds. We continually create thoughts and project these thoughts outside of the mind, just like cinematic frames are projected onto a screen. So I'm going to try and interpret that. So everything, I guess, what she's saying here starts off as a thought in the mind. So if it's the house that gets built or the new car that gets designed is an originally a thought in someone's mind, and therefore it's an outward projection of what was initially an inner experience. So because it's just an external projection of what's going on in someone's mind, everything around us is a little bit fake because it's basically just the mind on the outside, and it's we're walking around in a world where we're looking at what was at one point a thought in someone's head. So I guess on that level, it is kind of a weird world we live in. It's weird for a lot of reasons. It's miraculous for a lot of reasons, but in her case, she uses the word illusionary. She says that real life is something other than we think it is, and you hear this quite a bit in experiences. They go to this next dimension, and it is more real or more believable than this world that we live in here. And it sounds amazing, doesn't it, to think that someone could actually say that, could actually think that there is a place that is even more real than the world we're living in now, because the world we live in now seems incredibly real. There's pain and suffering, there's joy and happiness, there's physical things we can touch, there's people we can talk to, but apparently, according to many people who have near-death experiences, this world is grey and murky compared to what is awaiting us in the next dimension. And when I start reading things like this, it's just natural for me to think, well, why is it so hidden or so hard to see this other world? Why is it only a few people get to experience this paradise that is seemingly right there in front of us, but which is so hard to connect to? And I won't go down that path. It just is a thought that came into my head just then. So I'll go through this last paragraph like I said I would at the start. So she says in summary, these couple of experiences she's had are a connection she has been able to experience, and it is her way of connecting to all. She says uses the word all, some says use the word one. In her case, it's all. And all that is a unique energy which goes from a refined level down to increasingly denser levels. So I'm not too sure what that means. I guess up in heaven there's freedom, space, and higher state of energy, and then in places like planet Earth there is a heavier, denser, lower vibrational state, which gives us a little bit of a darker experience. But she says one of the main things that this experience has given her is that, and I think we can all listen to what she's saying here, I know that life is eternal and unbroken, and that death, the way we see it on earth, does not exist. It's only a trip to another plane of existence. So this body we have is not the reality of who we are. And she says we live our lives, the lives we live here on earth, it's not a coincidence, okay? So she doesn't say that anything like our whole lives are planned before we come here. It's all part of this divine system. She seems to think it's more of a consequence of our own free will and the way we use this amazing mind, this tool we call our mind. And she says our lives are a direct consequence of what the mind creates. So, if your mind is in a negative state, like my own, a lot of the time, it's going to create a world for you where everything is a little bit negative. And trying to put some more positive words into it, or train it to think a little bit more positively, is going to make the world seem a lot better place to be. So what I do is I place little posters around my unit, just positive words like saying I am calm, I am love, I am peace, and I just have a few little inspirational type posters around, just reminding me that this physical realm is not, it's just an illusion, and we are not these human bodies we all think we are. And for me, that gives me a little bit of a pickup, and puts my mind into a better place. But my aim is mainly to just, similar to what this girl does, to serve others, to spread more love, and to make this place just a little bit lighter and brighter for everyone else. She says this here: I'm here on earth to live happiness and lightness of being. I am here in this body and in this dimension of space and time to learn that each and every moment is the only moment which really exists. So she's coming back to a bit of Buddhist philosophy here. She's, saying be present, be aware of your thoughts, just try to stay connected to the now. She says everything is an illusion created by thoughts within the mind. So, yeah, don't listen to your thoughts, people. It's easy to say, but harder to put into practice. This world we are here to have fun and to play, because it is a joyful creation of the divine. And to do whatever you should to make you happy, and to do what you can to contribute to the expansion and the happiness of all and everything into creation. I came into this body on this earth to be light-hearted, carefree, here and now. Thank you, Stefania. That is all for her. I'm just going to have a quick break and then I'll sum it up. So, although this experience didn't have a lot of the elements which I kind of like to read about, the guides, the travel to other planets, that sort of thing, it still had a pretty good description of what being in this other dimension was like, and because of that, I guess in a way it kind of had a little bit more credibility for some weird reason. But I personally like to think there's an angels out there, there's guides out there, because I can connect with these other beings, and everyone's experience is unique. So it's always good to hear anyone's experience of what the other dimension is like, no matter what happened, and whether it's a dark or light experience. And everyone is going to bring back a slightly different tale of what that was like. But generally speaking, there's usually feelings of peace and disconnection from this human body, and a dimension where there is no time and it is eternal, and it is totally inexplicable from a human point of view, because it's like chalk and cheese. It's too different to even try to describe, but good on these people for giving it a go. So, hopefully, and most importantly, I hope you got something out of it and you enjoyed hearing it this week. And I look forward to bringing you another one next time. And in the meantime, just keep being your amazing selves and realizing that your body, this shell you're wearing, is not who you truly are. And eventually, it will expire, but that is an exciting thing, because then this whole new universe will open up to you. So always remember, I love you, and always remember, if you want to reach me, my email is podafterlife@gmail.com. And even though I don't know who most of you are, I send you my love, and hope that life is being kind. Talk next time. Goodbye.